Hi, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. My name is Isabel Ross, and I am the coach at Peak Endurance Coaching. Episode 75 is an interview with Donnie Campbell. Donnie of Inverness, Scotland, is an ex-Royal Marine Commando with a background in a wide range of sports, from mountaineering and kayaking to football and shinty. Yes, that is a sport. Shinty is unique to Scotland and one of the oldest games in the world. The game itself is similar to games such as hockey and lacrosse in some aspects and has historical roots with golf and ice hockey, so a real hybrid. As with lacrosse, the game is a fast-moving aerial game where physical fitness is tested to the limits. However, different from both hockey and lacrosse, in shinty, feet can be used to stop the ball, but not the hands unless you are the goalkeeper. You can carry the ball on your, I think it's pronounced caman, which is the stick used in the game. And this can also be swung above shoulder height. A skillful eye and a sense of survival are paramount. However, Donnie's greatest passion, other than shinty, now is running, which he has gone on to excel in. Donnie has recently set an astonishing new Munros record to finish all 282 mountains in Scotland over 3,000 feet, which is 914 approximately metres, in 31 days, 23 hours and 2 minutes. He ran and power hiked a total of 1,422 kilometres and cycled and kayaked in between. Can I ask you a favour? Would you be able to go on over to Apple Podcasts to rate, review and subscribe? Doing this helps the podcast grow, which is greatly appreciated. So, how is your running going? If you are plagued by niggles and injuries, go to the specialists at Health and High Performance, where they utilise the latest in technology and experience to help you run your best and achieve your potential. Pardon me. So head to healthhp.com.au/run or find them on Instagram, Health High Performance. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to getting back to racing. But to be ready for when this happens, you need to be actually working on getting stronger, fitter and faster now. You can do this with a structured and well-planned training program with Peak Endurance Coaching. Email me, Isabel, at peakendurancecoaching.com.au, and let's get your training moving in the right direction. I hope you enjoy the interview with Donnie. Hi, Donnie, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself, your athletic background, and how you got into running?
Cool. So I'm based in Inverness in Scotland. So I'm actually from Skye. So my sporting background from an early age was playing shinty, which is a kind of a Scottish game played up north coast and kind of more around the Speyside way. So I played that at quite a high level. Scotland under-17 development squads, etc. Then joined the Marines at 17. So did 3.5 years in the Marines. So obviously quite physically demanding. And then from there, I went on to university to study sports coaching and development, and then kind of got into long distance running after I finished university to kind of try and get fit again to play shinty. So obviously university lifestyles, you drink too much, you party too much, you eat too much. So yeah. Basically, I think that's about 2008, 2009. Friend said, why don't you come do this race on Islay and Jurits, 2 islands in the west coast of Scotland. It was like 150 miles over 5 days, so MDS kind of style race. And I thought, yeah, sounds like a great adventure. It's kind of why I joined the Marines in the first place. So did that and just really enjoyed running over hills. So that's kind of how I ended up becoming like mountain endurance runner, and basically my day job is running coach, so kind of degree in sports coaching development. So it's all kind of linked around specialising in endurance running, really.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And so recently you ran all of Scotland's Munros. Can you explain to my listeners who may not know what a Munro is?
So a Munro in Scotland is a hill over 3,000 feet or 900 and odd metres. It's classed as a Munro. So there's some peaks that are over that distance but not a Munro because they're close to a bigger peak. So it's basically all the big peaks over 3,000 feet And there's 282 of them classed in Scotland, all spread out from away up north in Sutherland, so near Cape Wrath, to the most southerly Ben Lomond, which is kind of near Glasgow.
Yep.
So yeah, all over. So yeah, basically in August, wasn't in August I decided last year that I kind of wanted to climb all the Munros in Scotland. I've never climbed them all. I've done most of them. And I thought it'd be cool to just do them all in one go. So basically last year I started planning a Munro round, which is basically climbing all the Munros. And I decided to go on a self-propelled style, so that was either cycle or kayak in between them, and then run, walk, crawl up them. So that's what the previous styles have been done, and the previous record was like 39 days and 9 hours. So yeah, I kind of started planning it last year, and then went for it in August, really. So yeah, that's kind of.
So you started planning this actually before COVID and all that sort of stuff. So you would have done it regardless.
Yeah. So basically, I've been wanting to do it for a few years. So, well, I've always wanted to climb all the Munros in Scotland, and then kind of over the last maybe 3-4 years, I wanted to do a self-propelled Munro round. But it was like, because I raced quite a lot in the summer, I was enjoying the racing. So it wasn't until last year I was like, okay, I kind of feel it's ready to take a year off racing and kind of concentrate on this big adventure. So June last year, I made the decision not to do any races in 2020 and concentrate on this adventure. So I originally planned it for end of May, beginning of June. Longer daylight in Scotland, and it's before the school holidays break up, so it's a bit less busy. Still busy because it's summer, but a bit less busy. But that got kiboshed because of the COVID restrictions in Scotland at the time. So yeah, it's kind of one of these ones. There was a lot of planning involved, but then there's also a lot of last minute planning, so I wasn't sure whether I would get to go in August with some of the travel restrictions that were in place until like middle of July. But yeah, thankfully I managed to able to start it on the 1st of August.
And what made you decide you wanted it to be self-propelled?
I wanted the challenge. I wanted to see how far I could push myself physically. So, and I didn't like the idea of doing some Munros and then getting in a car and driving, because some of the access to Munros are on like private estate roads, so or Landover track. So if you take a vehicle access up a Landover track, how far do you take it up Landover track? To class it as you've climbed the Munro rather than you've driven halfway up and then climbed the last wee bit. So it was kind of that, and I just kind of liked the idea of self-propelled. Cycling and kayaking, running, I got asked the question, why didn't you just do it all running? And for me, the running on the road doesn't appeal to me. So the long road sections where you'd had link different mountain ranges up, running, it just didn't appeal. I wasn't enthused by that. But whereas if you're cycling, it's kind of, that's the appropriate travel for traveling long distance on road if you're self-propelled. So yeah, it just made sense to do it that way. And obviously last two Munro rounds that had the record set were both self-propelled. So Stephen Pikes in 2010 and then Charlie Campbell before that, both cycled. Charlie swam, Stephen kayaked between the Munro on Mull and the mainland.
Yeah. And so had you done a lot of cycling and kayaking before?
Not a lot of cycling. I didn't really. I've obviously could cycle as a kid, but I didn't actually own a bike until end of last year. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I was fairly new to cycling. So spent maybe the autumn last year just doing a lot of cycling, and then had a wee bit of cycling in my training schedule leading into the Munro round. Kayaking, I wasn't worried. There was only 3 kayaking sections, and when I was at college and university studying sports coaching and development, years ago, I actually was doing a lot of kayaking. I was actually a level 3 kayak coach on inland water, so I knew the kayaking would be fine. It was like 20-minute kayaks or 10-minute kayaks, so it wasn't really a long distance. So yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, fair enough. So how did you train for such a big challenge?
So obviously last year I spent a lot of time on the bike towards the end of last year, getting used to cycling and just kind of building up cycling fitness, getting comfortable on the bike. Basically, I would probably say I've been training all my life for this big adventure, because all the experience I've gained previously helped me be successful. So like times from when I was in the Marines to, my early days of long distance running, the mistakes I've made in races and in training, have kind of enhanced kind of the way I train or my approach to training and nutrition and stuff. But yeah, so I've been probably training all my life. More specifically, obviously come January, February, March, April, May, June, it was just a lot of volume. I wasn't too worried about specific speed sessions. I might do one speed session a week just because I enjoy running hard now and again. But it was a lot of kind of just long days in the mountains, or like cycling to the mountains and then running in them and then coming back. So, on average, I was probably averaging between 20 and 25 hours of training a week. And then on my peak weeks, I was probably about 30 hours of training. And that was kind of like 90% running, 10% cycling on that. So yeah, and it was just a lot of, so when we had restrictions in Scotland, there was a lot of just repetitions on my local hill, which are just out across the front door. So, I'd probably be getting 2,500 meters of ascent a day just by
That's all right.
doing
That's
2
great.
runs on the Dunedin Hill. So, I worked in ascent, so I've always kind of worked in ascent for the last 3 or 4 years. I don't really worry about distance. So yeah. Generally I would be getting over 10,000 meters of ascent a week as well, climbing wise. So that just gives you an idea of the volume.
Yeah,
So it's definitely all kind of just steady state, zone 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's huge. And did you find that the cycling helped with your running? Like people find that the cycling transfers over to running.
In training, I found cycling just let me increase my volume because it's non-impact. So obviously, if I was doing 20 plus hours of running, then I could get another 5 hours on the bike, which would increase my training volume. So yeah, it's easier to get a lot more volume on the bike because there's less impact through the body. Whether it complements it, it's hard to say. Cycling's obviously muscles are the same, but using them in a different way, and it's non-impact, non-weight bearing. So yeah, I enjoyed the cycling just because it was kind of something different and something still relatively new to do. And it was a nice way of, especially when your legs were tired, to get some extra volume in, training-wise. And then again, during the round, I really enjoyed the cycling because it was just something different to look forward to, and it was actually easier than going up and down hills. It was just sitting on the bike for a couple of hours, spinning the legs. So yeah.
And it would have been easier to eat on the bike, wouldn't it, than when you're running?
Yeah, it was easier to eat on the bike, but again, during the round, it wasn't particularly hard. It's not like I was racing, so I was going at a very easy pace because I was having to do multiple days of like 12, 14 hours. So, I was able to eat solid foods throughout. I was never sick at any point during the 31 days.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant.
So, nutrition, eating while on the bike or moving was fine because I was moving, I was walking most of the uphills. And it's not like I had like people chasing me or being chased. So, I could stop and, eat a bar if I wanted to at the top of a summit and take in a view for like a couple of minutes and then carry on. So, yeah, it wasn't, eating wasn't a problem. Whereas normally in racing, then, you're putting your body under a bit more stress. It can be a bit harder to get the nutritional demands in.
And what was your nutrition like? What sort of things were you eating?
Okay, so kind of when I was moving, it was mainly Active Root, which is a carbohydrate sports drink with a bit of ginger in it. It's made from raw cane sugar. So I've been using that for years. I find it's great. It kind of doesn't give me any GI distress or issues. And then, so that's got 40 grams of carbohydrates. So I was looking at trying to get minimum 90 grams of carbohydrate every hour. There's studies in mountain marathons that suggest that you can consume up to 120 grams of carbohydrate every hour if you train your gut. I did try that, but I found that was leaving me a bit nauseous at the start. So I settled for around about 90 grams. It wasn't exact science, and then I would be eating mainly Cliff Bars or Trek Bars or Shot Blocks, and then the occasional caffeine gel towards the end of the day. But yeah, that was basically my nutrition for when I was out on the hill or on the bike. And then when I was back at the van, it was more like just an eating competition. I wasn't counting calories or carbohydrates. It was more just try and get as much food in as possible. So that was kind of like a recovery drink as soon as I finish, and then either just like crisps or cakes or biscuits, and then an evening meal, which is mainly pasta or a lentil bolognese or a veggie burger or pizza if we're near a pizzeria. So yeah.
So did you find you were having, like, you were hungry when you finished, or you were kind of having to force the food in?
I was very. Some days I'd be kind of a wee bit hungry. Some days it's more just a chore. Like, it sounds like an ideal world that you get to eat what you want and as much of it as you want. But after like 1 or 2 days, you got sick of food. Like I was more just like another part of the training or the round was just, I had to eat. So basically I was eating every night until I felt like I'd just finished the Christmas lunch and I had to roll off to bed. So I was kind of the way I was eating until I was like really full, like almost sickly full. And then I just like stagger off to bed. That's the amount of calories I was trying to consume. And I was still losing weight, which I was never thought I would lose weight. So I wasn't surprised at that. I was just kind of like, I was eating massive portions for dinner. To the point, it just felt like every evening I was eating a Christmas lunch inside food. You're just like that sore stomach, kind of sleepy, nauseous kind of feeling.
And so, how much weight did you lose?
I don't know. I didn't weigh myself at the start, and I didn't really weigh myself at the finish. But I looked a bit leaner at the end, and I was a bit lighter than my normal weight when I got back. But I couldn't tell you exactly how much weight I lost.
So what was involved in organising the challenge? I know you said you started planning it last year, so it took about 6 months to organise. Was it a big thing to organise?
No. So, planning the most efficient route or trying to think of the most efficient route, because some of the hills in Scotland are quite remote and quite boggy, and linking them up where no one's been before, you're kind of having to kind of look at different lines and that. So there's a lot of times looking at a map, speaking to other hill runners that know certain areas slightly better, getting their input as well into kind of the route. Because I was following a linear route, I didn't have to get back to where I started each day. It meant I was doing like completely different routes to what a normal person would do or what a normal walking route is on these hills. So, I'll be dropping off the back of a hill going into a glen or a valley, which very few people have gone, zero path to link up some more Munros. So so that took up a fair bit of time in the autumn, organising just the route itself. And then kind of logistics, it was all right. It wasn't too bad. Like I had a crew ready to go in May, but then that got cancelled. So I was trying to get a support crew for August, which ended up just being my wife because of COVID restrictions. Felt safer just having one support crew rather than having 2 or 3 people changing over every different week. Just kind of that bubble in the van. That worked out really well because after the first couple of days, she kind of knew what I was wanting each evening and kind of the setup of the van and the routines we had. So, having that just one set of support crew, I Rachel, my wife, made a big difference on that. So in logistics, I own a motorhome, so that was going to be a base and bike. So it was fairly straightforward logistics if you're used to planning adventures like that. So I didn't find it too challenging. It was a bit time consuming, kind of organising enough nutrition and kind of speaking to different sponsors and different people, and then also I was getting filmed for the BBC Adventure shows. So just a lot of kind of communication and making sure people are in the right place and know what's happening and stuff. That was all last minute because I didn't really know I was going to go in August until like middle of July. So that's kind of where last minute.
And so I know sometimes for some of the rounds, people have local guides to find the best route. Did you have anyone like that, or paces?
No, I didn't have any local guides. I've done a few of the Munros, and then obviously I recce'd some. I did have some friends join me for a few days, and they helped carry some of my food in the bigger days. But I think I had company for 64 of the 282 Munros on that. So I had friends join me, but that was it. So
which is I mean, a part of ultra running is spending a lot of time on your own. So I suppose it's fairly normal then anyway.
Yeah, like I don't mind being on my own. I spend a lot of time on my own. I work from home. So yeah, and then I train a lot by myself. So yeah, having my own company, I'm kind of comfortable in that. So yeah, it's not a problem.
Yep, I get it. So when you'd finished like a 12 to 14 hour day, and obviously eating was part of your recovery, did you do anything else for recovery? You said you only had your wife as a crew, so I'm assuming you didn't have a masseur or anything like that. How did you make sure your legs were feeling okay for the next day?
So I had a machine called the recovery pump. It's basically a big compression bags for your legs, which help flush the fluid back into the centre of the body. So I'd be on that for maybe 45 minutes to an hour. So that was kind of like my routine. I'd get in, have a recovery drink, maybe a quick shower, and then sit in this machine with my legs up on a bench with the machine running, and then I just eat and then have dinner while still on the machine, and then be in bed. So from time finishing, some days being in bed, I'd probably be an hour and a half. That's kind of how prioritizing sleep I was getting. I wasn't faffing about. I'd get in, I'd have a shower, I'd have a recovery drink. I'd sit in this recovery pump machine, and then get to bed, really. So that was it. I did have a friend who's a sports massage who came and visited 3 times. So I managed to get 3 sports massages during the 31 days. Yeah, that was it, really. There wasn't any key secrets to recovery. Like, first couple of days I tried stretching, and then just kind of ended up just sitting on the recovery machine because I was just too tired to stretch afterwards. So
yeah. I think stretching is one of those things that sounds great, but not many people really actually do it. So did you get a decent amount of sleep?
Yeah, I would say I average about 8 hours sleep a night. Obviously, there's some days I got a bit less. But yeah, like there's some days I got a bit more. So just the way the hills lie, some days were like really long, so like 16 hours, and then some days, like the occasionally, you might be down in like 8 hours. So day you finish in 8 hours, you can get a bit more sleep. Whereas the longer days, you might have a bit less sleep. But yeah, on average, I'd say I managed to get 8 hours sleep. I was very kind of trying to prioritize that because that's when your body recovers the best. So
yes,
I wouldn't say I was solid 8 hours sleep, but I was getting 8 hours lying down in bed on average a night. So it wasn't too bad sleep-wise.
Yeah, and sleep is meant to be one of the best recovery methods there are. So that's really good. And so did you get any niggles, or were you fine the whole time?
Yeah, I had quite a few niggles. So after like the first 5 days, my right tibia tendon down the front of my right ankle was starting to get inflamed, but just tendinopathy, and it got really bad. Day 7, it was really hurting, to the point I was like almost in tears coming downhill. So that's when I was loading it in a way that was really, really agony. But I managed to get on top of it. I had a friend who ran from John O'Groats to the Sahara Desert, so that's like the very north part of Scotland, all the way through Europe into Morocco to the Sahara Desert quite a few years ago. And I remember him getting Achilles tendinopathy after the first like 3 or 4 days. But he managed it, and it eventually went away. So I had kind of slight confidence that, if I could get on top of it by managing it, I might get to a point that's more bearable. So basically, it took 3 or 4 days just to try and get on top of it. And, the stuff I was using was the recovery pump to try and get rid of the inflammation, anti-inflammatories, ice at any opportunity I got when I was near the van, elevating it, and sleeping my leg elevated, and a bit of compression. And just, using the poles a bit more to try and offload and favour your left side. So yeah, managed to try and get on top of that. And then on day 17, my left went exactly the same way because I'd obviously been overcompensating on my left for the last week or so. So yeah, and then I was kind of just like, trying to manage that. So there was just a lot of firefighting, trying to manage niggles. That was probably the hardest bit. I never felt like cardiovascular-wise, so endurance-wise, I never felt overly stretched. Yes, I was tired, but I never felt like physically I couldn't finish each day. Like I still had energy to keep going up and down hills. That was more the kind of just fatigue of being in constant pain all day was just starting wearing me down mentally.
Oh, I can imagine. So how did you deal, because I'm assuming, like with any kind of ultra running, there's many highs and lows. what was some of the lows and maybe the injuries, the niggles? I don't like to call them injuries because they didn't stop you. So what was some low points and how did you get through them?
So obviously day 17, I've mentioned, was a very low point, probably the lowest point of the round. It was just kind of like that's when my left leg started hurting, and I'd been doing big days, and I was mentally prepared. I knew going into the round that, round about the middle of the round to day 14, 15, 16, 17, it'd be like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You're so far from the start, but you're so far from the finish. You feel like you're just getting nowhere. And, the novelty of first week worn off, and I've been doing it for so long, but yet the finish, Ben Hope, the last Munros, was still like 14 days away. So I was prepared for that. I knew that was going to be the hardest point in the round. So kind of, day 17, I was just kind of like, I'd lost focus. I was thinking about like how many more days I had. And my left left tibia tendon was really sore. And all I could think about was like another week or so of pain and going really slow. That just kind of was just a downward spiral. I kind of, going into it and during it, I was just trying to focus on one day at a time and not worry about the following day, and then even just focusing on one Munro at a time. But on day 17, I was just kind of getting bogged down with like, I'd been doing 12, 14-hour days. And for me, it didn't seem that I was getting anywhere because I still had like another 2 weeks to go, and like my body was kind of starting to fail me. That was kind of like a low point. Started questioning, why was I doing it, what's the point, etc., etc. But because I've been in low points before in races and kind of, I'm highly motivated and I really want to achieve this, and I kind of care passionately about it. I kind of compare it to, how you get through a bad day at work. You might go home from work, complaining about your job, say it's rubbish, etc., etc. But just because you've had one bad day doesn't mean you don't go to work the following day. And that's exactly what it was. So day 17, I got back to the sport van, kind of moaned and whinged to my wife, Rachel, how I wasn't enjoying it, it was rubbish, could just go home, etc., etc. But there was never any doubt that, I would go home that night. Like I was ready 2 days up on the previous record. So, worst case scenario, I could have taken 2 days rest and still, possibly broken the record. But so basically the next day I got up and just started at normal. So up at 5 a.m, out the door by 6, running or walking up a hill. So, it was kind of that routine. It's like routine. That's what I did at that point. I wasn't enjoying it, but I still went out and did it, knowing that, I would just kind of pick away and eventually get there. And that's what I did, So, day 18 afterwards, I just went out, moved things about slightly, just try and help my left ankle. So I moved day 18 and 19 about, which meant I had a bit more cycling and a bit less running on day 18. Just swapped 10 days about. So that kind of made a wee bit of a difference. But it was just kind of like, okay, I just get my head down, try and refocus one hill at a time. I've got 2 days up in the record, so, there's no point of, quitting or that. Just kind of just pick away and see how far you get. So that's kind of how you go through it.
And what about a high point? Do you have some high points you could share?
Yeah, so obviously the finish was really good. Completing it on and within my schedule. So I originally planned to do it in 33 days. I did it in 31 days and 23 hours. So it felt great, finishing it. But also kind of when you're at the finish, it kind of felt a bit sad because it was an end of a chapter, because obviously I've been wanting to do this for quite a few years. And it was like 12 months of my life and planning to kind of executing it. So it's kind of like end of a chapter, but it was still really nice. It was kind of like mixed emotions because, obviously for the 31 days, there was a lot of suffering, but again, there was a lot of fun just enjoying the simple life. Living in a van, getting up every day and just having to run hills. That's all I had to worry about. I didn't have to worry about anything else in life. All I did was wake up, run, eat, and sleep. So, it was a great way to live, even though there's a lot of suffering involved in running big Munros every day.
It sounds awesome, yeah.
So obviously the finish was really high, and then the next point was going home to Skye. So like the coolings on Skye is like really technical, really rocky, really kind of alpine kind of ridge. And I got a lovely day for it. I had a couple of friends out on the ridge, so that actually felt like just a day out in the hills doing the ridge, the Coolum Ridge, rather than actually a part of the challenge. So it was the only day I probably didn't really look at my watch and think, oh, how long will it take me to get back to the van? What time will I finish tonight? It was more just kind of like, oh, this is pretty cool. Just moving along the ridge, kind of a bit scrambling, and just chatting away with friends. So yeah, that was pretty high point as well.
And so, in regards to, say, shoes and gear, how many pairs of shoes did you go through?
Probably, yeah, binned about 7 pairs of shoes at the end of it. So thankfully, I'm sponsored by Salomon, and I run in fairly minimalist, lightweight shoes. I have for the last 10 years. So the trade-off of having lightweight, minimalist shoes is they just don't stand up to Scottish bogs and rocks. So it wasn't like the sole was wearing out. It was more just tearing the sides to shreds by like constantly having them wet and then scuffing them off rocks or kicking rocks with them, which isn't great either. It hurts your toes when you kick a rock. But yeah, so 7 pairs of shoes I crashed during the round. Yeah.
And what was the weather like? Because Scotland has notoriously quite difficult weather for that sort of thing, especially over such a long time. Did you?
So I was very kind of lucky with the weather. Obviously, like in Scotland, you're never going to get 31 days of blue skies and sunshine. It's not Australia, so it's never going to be it. But I got a fair chunk of good weather, i.e., blue skies, a lot of cloud-free Munros. Some days where it was actually really hot, maybe a bit too hot, but it was a bit better than some of the other days. I had quite a few days where it was like proper Scottish, so it was like gale force wind on top of the Munros with horizontal rain. Them days were just a bit more about getting your head down and just keep moving, just putting on loads of waterproof and carrying on. Probably, the weather was fine. There's probably 1, 2, 3 really bad days that really stick out, that were really kind of wet, windy, and just miserable days. And then there was maybe another handful of days that were just grey and dreich and drizzly. And then, there was probably a good couple of weeks where it was just like blue skies and sunshine. It was perfect weather for just being up in the hills. So it wasn't too bad weather-wise.
Oh, you were lucky. That's great. And so what was your, you finished, and then what's your recovery been like since then?
Recovery, been since I finished. Obviously, as soon as I finished, I was just a bit busy because I had taken 5 weeks off work. So as a running coach, I had to catch up with all my athletes. So that and coupled with media requests and podcasts, it was crazy busy. So I had images of finishing and going home and having a bath and having time to stretch. But it was probably about a week before I actually had time to myself to stretch and relax and just switch off from catching up with all my work and all the other stuff. So after that, it was kind of, after the first week, it was kind of nice just to try and get back to normality. So bit of stretching, and then recovery since then was going well until last week, until I came off my bike and cracked my ribs. So that's a bit to get back outside. But it's fine with me being an idiot on a bike. The recovery was going fine until so just kind of get back to normality and just try and get into some shape for the winter, because I do a bit of ski mountaineering in the winter in Scotland when there's snow. So and there's a few ski races going on in Scotland as well. So just try and get in shape for that now.
Was it weird not to be running every day?
Pardon?
Yeah, once you finished, was it weird not to be getting up and running every day?
It was nice for the first couple of days, but then afterwards, when I was having to do 8 hours at a desk, I was kind of missing the Munros. I was kind of missing just that kind of, I didn't have any responsibility for the 31 days. I could just get up and run. I kind of, after 2 or 3 days, I was missing Munros. It's kind of, it took me probably maybe a week or 2 weeks before I was up in Munro again. It was nice just to kind of not have to get up at 5 a.m. But there was a sad bit of me that I was missing, just living in a van and running every day. It's a great lifestyle. And especially when after you've done something like this, you kind of blank out the bad points and just remember the good points, and you're thinking, Oh, that was really great.
Yeah, the brain's funny like that. So other than some schemo over winter, what's your next challenge or event?
I haven't got anything planned. Wouldn't mind doing a couple of big days on skis on Scotland, so maybe like a Munro a round of some Munros, not all of them on skis. And then next year, obviously, we still don't know what's happening with COVID. So yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a few races next year. Not sure which ones. Depends what happens. If not, I don't know. Maybe do a long bike ride, kind of something different, or maybe just do another, not long run as in Munro round long, but maybe a couple of day run somewhere. Really haven't thought too much about it, but yeah, it's just generally going to be involving running up and down hills basically, or doing something long distance. But yeah, no real plans as such yet. Just wait and see what happens with all the COVID restrictions and racing and stuff like that.
So, are there any races in Scotland at the moment?
There's a couple of low key races. So, like the Benahee Ultra is going ahead this weekend, and I think there might be a few other races, but I think they're getting set off in time trials and stuff. And none of the bigger major races like the Highland Fling or the West Highland Way went ahead, and same in Europe. None of like the UTMB and Sligama and some of the Skyrunning races never went ahead. So whether they go ahead next year or not is a big question mark. So yeah, see what happens. I wouldn't mind maybe going to Europe and doing a big mountain race if there's one going ahead. Just have to wait and see.
Yeah. We've all got our fingers crossed that there will be some sort of season next year. Now, do you have any tips for listeners who, during this time of not having races to plan for necessarily, if they're thinking of a challenge, like how do they motivate themselves to complete a challenge when you're on your own and not racing against someone else? Do you have some tips for people for that?
Yeah, so obviously, during when there's no races, your motivation might be a bit lower than normal because you haven't got anything to train for. So it's kind of that thinking outside the box. You don't have to have a race as a goal. For example, as a coach, I'm telling some of my athletes to think about, maybe trying to set a PB on one of their local routes. So, for example, going and doing a round in Scotland like Tranter round or Ramsey round, which is like a big long distance running out, taking in like 24 Munros or 20 Munros or something like that. Or even just doing something shorter, so like trying to set a marathon PB in a time trial situation, so not in a race. So these are the kind of things, or your race you were going to do if it was local, it's not going ahead, it's just going to run it as a time trial, see what time you can put down, or even run a route, train to run a route that you've run in training and see if you can set a new PB on that route and put a date in the diary, commit to it, and it's kind of going to give you a bit more motivation. Or come up with a crazy challenge of try and do something new. But the key is to find something you care passionately about that you want to do, and that way you're going to be more motivated to stick at it. So obviously, if you don't like road running and you haven't got any interest in marathons, then there's no point in saying, I'm going to set a marathon PB, because you're not going to be motivated or enthused by the training to kind of make the outcome. So whereas if you're enthused by running up and down hills for a long period of time, you might be looking to do a PB of a hill, setting a new time going up a hill, or seeing how many hills you can do in 24 hours, or there's been a lot of Everesting going up. It's basically just doing reps on a hill to climb the height of Everest. So these are the kind of things that you can do, and basically the trick is to actually, rather than just saying you're going to do it, to put a date in the diary, commit to it, tell people that you're going to do it, so you're going to be held accountable to do it, and that will give you the motivation. It's a bit like you enter a race, you tell people you're doing that race, so you kind of commit to it and you want to do the race. So it's exactly the same if you're setting yourself a challenge. Put it in the diary, give yourself a date, and then tell your friends, because then you're going to be more accountable and have committed to it.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, and there's still always something that you can plan for and have as a motivator. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with the Munros. That's such an awesome run, and so well done on breaking the record. And Thanks for chatting with
Thank
me.
you. No, thanks for having me on. It was great to chat to you this morning.
No worries. Thanks for that. Bye.